Welcome. Hi, everyone. Thank you for spending your time with us today. My name is Marissa Fallon, I am the Director of Advocacy at Parents Defending Education. I'm very excited about our episode today, as we'll be talking about parental engagement. Everything from how to get started in forming your groups to tips and advice about improving your group for both more seasoned parents and new parent groups. I'm so happy today to be joined by two amazing women. Our first contributor today is Cristine Trooien. Cristine is the Executive Director of Minnesota Parents Alliance and a mother of 3 children. So happy to have you join us, Cristine.
Thanks so much for having me.
We're also joined today by Scarlen Valderaz, a mom of 4. Scarlen is our dedicated parent advocacy advisor at Parents Defending Education. So thank you both so much for joining us. I know you guys have great tips and great experience to share with our parents. So we're going to learn a lot in this hour. Our president and founder, Nicole Neely at Parents Defending Education, always says that she was inspired to start Parents Defending Education after she met and talked with a lot of parents and parent groups who were fighting for a healthy, non-political education for their kids in K through 12 schools across the country. Over the last 3 years at PDE, we've established an extensive network of parent groups and organizations that are leading this national grassroots movement to restore classrooms to one that focus on education and not indoctrination. But even though there are many parent groups out there, there are a lot of communities, school districts, and counties across the country that don't have any organized advocacy groups for K through 12 schools. To help with that, Parents Defending Education put together the Parent Engagement Field Guide. The guide guides parents, grandparents, and concerned citizens through the process of starting a group in their community. There's a lot of information in the field guide, and our idea in putting it together was really, don't feel like you have to start at number 1 and go all the way through in order with every single category. We really tried to put together a comprehensive document where parent groups can pick and choose which areas of the guide really relate to them, or areas they're trying to work on, or areas they're trying to develop. So when you look at the field guide, it's a massive amount of information, all extremely helpful, but don't feel overwhelmed like you have to go from A to Z all at once. So in that vein, we brought Cristine and Scarlen here to help guide parents through the process of either starting a group, restarting a group, reorganizing a group, or taking an existing group to the next level. But before we get started, I wanted to ask Cristine to talk a little bit about her story and how she started Minnesota Parents Alliance. Cristine, can you tell us a little bit about how you got involved in parental rights advocacy and how you got your group started?
Yes. Well, I love this conversation, and I actually just feel like the heart of the parent movement really is in parent advocacy. My journey started probably as many people were starting to pay attention to what was going on during like 2021. It was the COVID chaos. There was a lot of confusion, division, disruption. It was really dysfunctional. And at that time, we saw some really invested step up and try to run for school board seats, thinking, surely, we're going to run for school board. And once we're on the school board, we can fix everything and it'll all be good. And we quickly found out that that's a lot easier said than done. Those school board, candidates who I think would have been excellent school board members just weren't effective. They didn't know what they were doing. They had full-time jobs and busy lives. And so they certainly didn't know how to run an effective campaign against a teachers union. So that's kind of where I stepped in, thinking there has to be a better way to do this, because you're looking at all of these parents who want to be involved and they just don't have the organization and the experience to know, what's the roadmap for this? None of us have ever done this before. So I just felt like at that point, there has to be some sort of an organization around supporting parents who want to get more involved in their schools, because this can't be our future, guys. Like everything that was so disrupted and dysfunctional, that can't be the future of public schools. And it was really an aha when you looked at the faces of kids who are watching adults engage in sometimes not so constructive ways, kind of looking at us like, do you guys have this under control? Is everything okay? The answer is yeah, like the grownups have this, guys. And I think that it's really exciting to see these parent advocacy groups come forward with just a new vision of how can we lead at our local level differently. So that was really the genesis of our organization. We definitely focused a lot on trying to help people. If they want to run for school board, that's great, but that's not the only thing that you can do. And I often tell people, if you would give me the choice between, you can get like 1 or 2 people elected to a school board, or you can have a really well-informed, invested, engaged parent group that has some longevity, I'll take the parent group all day long, because it's really that organization of parents and community members coming together and really caring about what's going on, and not just triaging things when they go wrong and putting out fires, but really being invested and being in it for the long haul. So that's kind of how our group started. And we are really a statewide organization that tries to help people at their local district level take a next step. And as you said, Marissa, this looks different for everybody. Every community has their own flavor. And so, you guys are national and we're sort of statewide, but, we're sort of up in the canopy. And I feel like it's really the local level district groups that have had the most impact. They're the ones that are really doing the work.
Well, I think 2 things that you just mentioned that really resonated with me, one of which is it's really the parents who are the boots on the ground who are seeing what's happening on a daily basis in our schools. So that's why I think parent groups are so important, and we can advocate so well because we really see what's happening on a daily basis. And the other thing that I found interesting, and everyone will realize this by the time we finish tonight, exactly what you said, Cristine, your organization is so successful and you have done so many amazing things, but it wasn't too long ago you were just a mom and you didn't have your organization. Not that just a mom, but you didn't have your organization. And so you were able to build this amazing, really important organization in your state. So I think it really gives hope to a lot of parents that it's not something they can't do. It's not insurmountable. It's something they can absolutely do. So on that note, Scarlen, I'd love to bring you into the conversation. And I want to talk obviously about how parents can start groups, but I'd also like to get a little bit of an introduction from you as to why parents should either start a group or join a group.
Yeah, I mean, a great example is Cristine. You run such an effective organization in the state of Minnesota. I look at your graphics, I look at your newsletters, and I'm just like, wow, that's so impressive that just a mom, can make something so effective and so big in her state. But I mean, it's really important to create your own parent group because we need to know what's going on. There may be some parents that have more time than others. So those that do have a little bit more time have an opportunity to be a little bit more invested. And the more people you have in your group, the more you can share the work, because just like in parenting, there's never a dull moment. There's never a dull moment in public school advocacy for us. There's always something going on. We're always receiving tips, always, listening to things that make us kind of like go, what? What did you just say? So the more people you have, the more you can share the work. You also have a team that you can trust. It's a sounding board, a solid research team where you can delegate things depending on, who likes doing, something better than another. It also provides a sense of community because if, we're not, sometimes you can feel so alone in this movement, but you're actually not. There are many parents out there, regardless of where, what lifestyle they have, what, politics they follow, they all have something that makes them go like, I don't know about that. So having a safe, team and work team to go to is really, great, and a really great reason to start your parent group. And also, it's a great place to share experiences, concerns, because like I had said, in this movement, you feel alone, but you're really not alone. And it's a really great vehicle to share information and educating the community because again, not everyone has the same, time. So if you have more time than another parent, then, why not do a little bit of research? Why not create a resource to help parents understand what's truly happening in their public school system? And also strengthen numbers. The more people you have showing up at a school board, being in an event, the more, I guess, legit you look as a community group, a parent group. And that's always a great, thing to have. And you also, courage is contagious. So the more people you have in your group, the more courageous you definitely do become.
The other thing I'd like to add to that too is, I think, and you touched on this, Scarlen, is that when you're part of a group, it's more of a collaborative approach. So all of our districts are so different. All of our school boards are so different. All of the issues that maybe we want to focus on from group to group, they may not be the same. So in different districts with different school boards, one approach might work better than another. So when you have a bunch of parents working together versus, parents working individually and not sharing information, not communicating with each other about what works well and maybe what didn't work so well, or who's a member on the school board who's more receptive, who you can approach. When you're working alone and advocating alone, you're not sharing all of that information with other people. So it's almost like everyone's inventing the wheel on their own. So when you have a group, you can work collaboratively and you can share ideas back and forth about which approach worked better in your district and with your school board. So Scarlen, now that we know why parents would want to start a group, what are some of the first steps that they should follow to start the actual group?
So when you're creating your parent group, you want to start with the big picture. There are so many things that you can focus on, but I find that focusing on 1, 2, even 3 things gives you a solid and realistic approach to how you're going to eventually change things within your school district or within the school board. When you start deviating or trying to attack many issues or putting out fires, that's where you kind of lose the organization. That's where you kind of lose the messaging, and it can give the impression to not only your members that join your parent group, but to the school board and the school district that you're not really organized, and that's not how you want to come across. You also want to identify like-minded parents and community members. Like I said, people that participate in the public school system come from all walks of life, all types from the entire political spectrum. So it's important to find people that are like-minded, and also remember that not everyone's going to share every single belief, not everyone's going to share every single value, but they do share the common goal of trying to make the public school system better in your area. So just remember that, and know what is happening, because when you know what is happening within your school system, you obviously will sound knowledgeable, and your school district and your school board will be like, oh, they actually know what they're talking about. They know what's going on in our public schools. You also want to be able to establish an effective timeline. So you don't want to say, oh, we're going to, remove social emotional learning within the next 2 months in the public school system. That's a pretty big goal. And I'm sorry, but you're probably not going to do that. So establish a timeline. Maybe if you are going to remove social emotional learning from your public school system, maybe it'll be within, 2 years, 3 years, and you can have small goals that you can reach within that timeline. And also you want to be able to identify the influencers within your group. And your influencers might not come with a huge following already. Your influencers might be the people that don't mind being on camera. They don't mind, being the public face of your group, and they maybe love public speaking, and they can do it effectively. They can do it politely, and they can, do it in a way that's going to reflect the values of your parent group. So when you, read influencers, don't think like, oh, the social media influencers that have like thousands of followers. No, that can just be, maybe a former teacher, or it can be, a parent that's had 3 kids go through the public school system, or it can be someone that's super knowledgeable already about the public school system. And don't forget about your PTA groups. You can find people that support public schools within your PTA groups as well.
Great. Those are some really good ideas about kind of the, top-down basic ideas of when we're starting a group and how and why we're starting a group. Cristine, I'd love to have you hop in here based on your experience. Can you add a little bit to the kind of the why and how, what you've seen in Minnesota?
Yeah, well, I think first of all, I just want to put it out there. Don't let perfect be the enemy of good. I think that you can look at some of these more developed parent groups across the country and say, okay, we can't pull that off. So like, why even try? Don't think that way. It really can be just a handful of moms in a living room or on a back deck trying to think about how do we have a brighter vision that we can kind of communicate out to the community members and try to get more people in our big tent, because I think that's really the purpose of these parent groups is that you want a lot of stakeholders. You don't want just like the angry group of like parents that have this one specific issue that they want to attack. If your vision is a more long-term goal for parent advocacy, you want to make sure that you are soliciting input from educators, from, you know, other community members and taxpayers, but also, you know, current district leaders that are on your school board, administrators. So I think trying to think about the way that you kind of market your group as a big conversation with a lot of different stakeholders, because that's the nature of public schools. So the kind of the pluralistic nature of public schools really has to invite conversation and dialogue with a lot of different people that maybe don't share everything. You don't have to agree on everything. That's okay. Just figure out what it is that you really want to drive at and stay very mission focused. So I think that's kind of one overarching thing. And my biggest recommendation is if you can avoid it, don't start your parent group in the thick of something that's just really heated. Like if things are kind of calm in your district right now, this is a great time to start a parent group, because really the whole purpose of this is to safeguard your school district so that if and when, you know, controversial things come up, you already have an infrastructure of really invested, involved parents and other stakeholders that can take up that mantle and get more involved on that one issue. But I really want to encourage people to look at that, again, more long range thing, and also what's below the surface, because I think when you have these flashpoint things, it's really easy to say, I'm really upset about this one thing and I want to end that right now. And you kind of like, you know, it's the mama papa bear thing. Like, I just need this to stop. But really it's peeling back the layers a little bit to figure out what is underlying that one thing. You know, why did that thing happen? What are the policies and the procedures and the curriculum and all the things that are sort of below the surface that we can pull at? And I know our organization feels kind of strongly about that approach. We created a video that helps our parent groups think through how to build relationships and create networks for positive change kind of over the long term.
Yeah, those are great tips. And I think you're absolutely right. You know, if you are a single issue group, which some are, right, you're not necessarily going to have the longevity as a group that has kind of a broader vision. You're looking at parental rights in general, or you're looking at multiple issues, right? Because sometimes the groups that are focused on just one topic, that if that gets addressed by the school board, right, then that group will just disband. So they've obviously served a purpose and they've obviously helped the community, but you're just not going to see the longevity with a group like that you might see in a group that is addressing broader issues.
And I think we're all seeing that like COVID, right? Because it was like, just get the kids back in schools or just take the masks off or whatever that one issue was. And once that's resolved, you lose all of these really solid parent and community advocates that could be great to engage on other issues. But because that issue went away, it sort of dissolves and disbands. So keeping that core group intact and moving forward on other things, I think is really important.
Yeah, that's great. That's a great point. So Scarlen, now that we talked about kind of the how and the why from a, you know, high up perspective, can you talk a little bit about, okay, we've decided we want to form a group. Can you give us a little bit of kind of a nuts and bolts walkthrough of, okay, now what? What do we do now?
Yeah, so after you meet your core group, you want to be organized. And maybe I love organization because I'm a mom of 4 and being organized keeps my head above water, but have a mission statement, establish an organizational structure, have a way that you're going to document meeting minutes. Maybe you have a secretary whose job is to just take notes at the school board meeting. Maybe you have, you know, your FOIA person or open records request person that's really good and loves to, you know, file these and submit them. And you know that's great. Set up a central email address too, because once you become public, once people know who you are, you're going to have people that want to reach out to you. So having a way for them to reach out to you is going to be very important. And having a central email address is going to be great. Sign up like-minded members. And I'm going to come back to you, Cristine, about that one. But also communicate, organize any content that you have for your newsletter, social media pages, Facebook group, Facebook page, whatever, you know, you're using, and, you know, be organized that way. And the one question that I wanted to ask you, Cristine, is how easy is it to find other parents? Like, how did you do it once you decided you were going to form your organization or this group? How did you find other people?
Yeah, well, I can say that one of the best ways to do it, if your district still records and puts their public meetings out there, look at the people that are showing up at school board meetings that have something to say, that show up for public comment. Those people are aware and invested in some issue. So I think that's a great way to find people, is who have already been, advocating for certain things in the district. But my favorite thing is good old fashioned networking. Like, every parent is so busy taking their kids to sports and all of the things. And then we as parents also have our own stuff. If you have a book club or golf buddies or whatever, start opening up those conversations, and make it, frame it up as, we have an opportunity to do something really good in this district. And it doesn't need to be like, do you want to fight with me in this like culture war battle? Like, that's kind of a non-starter. It really is, trying to build, again, this big tent of stakeholders that want to get more involved and take a next step. And it's not maybe just, the PTA is sometimes invested in like, okay, we're going to have a bake sale or a school carnival or whatever, but this is something a little bit bigger and bolder, and looking for people that have skill sets that you need for your group. So you'll probably talk a little bit more about this going forward, but as you start delegating, what are the responsibilities and roles that we need to kind of keep our parent group going? Look for that parent who's like, hey, I know you work in marketing or, advertising, you have like, a great skill set with social media, or you're in finance and we really need somebody to do some digging on, how is our district spending money? Like, kind of figure out how you can look at your own personal network and invite those people to be part of your group.
Another thing that we did with a group that I formed about 3.5 years ago, before PDE launched, we had a leadership team. And I'm interested, Cristine, if you have that with your organization. So what we had was basically a group of, just like you mentioned, maybe like 8 core people who were involved, 8 core volunteers. And they had very specific assignments, if you will, based on, as you mentioned, what their skill set was and also what their interest was. So we had a person who was interested in fundraising. We had a person who was an amateur graphic designer who did amazing posters for us and would put great graphics on our flyers so that we would really attract people's attention. We had a person who was a lawyer who was was very good at guiding us kind of on the legal front. We had, as Scarlen mentioned, a couple people who were very comfortable and interested in kind of being the media face of the organization. So we had a core leadership group, which also made a lot of the strategic decisions for the group. And then we had a much larger group of a couple hundred people that were all, all of the members in the group, because the reality is it's really hard to make decisions with 300 people, right? So yes. If you have a strategic leadership group, then they can talk about the big ideas and then share them with the larger group. And then, of course, go back and forth if people have concerns or input different from what the leadership team decided. So did you find that with your group starting out? Did you kind of have the same type of balance?
Yeah, so the districts that we have in Minnesota that have the most active and engaged and really successful parent groups have that model where they have this core group of parents and stakeholders who have decided they're really committed to this group and the longevity of it. You don't want to burn anyone out either. And I think that's something that is really important, is you make sure that you're delegating as much as you can to that core group of, whatever, if it's 3 that you start with, if it's 8 that you start with, whatever you have, just make sure that you're kind of spreading out the burden of running this group, because it is a job and it is, this is a deep act of service. You're really doing this, for the betterment of your district, and this is no one's get rich quick scheme. Nobody's getting paid to do this work. And so making sure that you're not really taxing some of the people that consistently lead the group. Figure out what you want to be doing as a group. And I know that a lot of the groups that we see with success, they have a monthly meeting, and it's like a standing date with the community. It's at the same place at the same time once a month. And it's an open invite for people to come. A lot of times they'll bring in a speaker on a certain topic that's really interesting or relevant to a certain issue that's happening in the district. And that takes some organization, right? Somebody's got to book the venue and plan it and be in charge of that piece. So trying to figure out, what are the things we want to be doing as a group, and then trying to allocate those out really makes a big difference. And don't not start your group because you don't think you have enough people to spread it out in the beginning, or that you're not going to ultimately have 300 people that are going to participate in your events. Like, you can start really small. And I think if you're really strategic and you're careful about the way that you message and what your group is about, it will attract more people over time, but it does take time for people to understand what your group is, what it's about, what you're doing, and then want to be part of it in a way that they're going to invest their own time into helping.
And tagging on to that piece of what your group is and what you're about, Scarlen, can you talk a little bit about when you're initially forming your group? What are some important things that you need to think about? I know we've talked in the past about the name, picking a name for your group and what should you have in mind. We've talked about a logo so you can be easily identifiable. I think we mentioned the domain, why that's important to register that. Can you just touch on some of those like very practical things that you need to do when you're setting up a group and how parents should approach that?
Yeah, I think when you're starting out with your parent group, you want you want to be memorable, and you also want to have, I guess, a catchy name. So create a name for your group. It can be an acronym. It can be, it can include your concerned parents of, whatever county you're from, or an example like that. Identify what social media you want to use, because different age groups have different preferences for social media. A lot of your grandparents, you're not really going to find on Twitter. A lot of your parents, moms, you'll find them on Instagram, on Facebook. So kind of know what social media platforms you're going to use and what type of content you're going to place to your social media platforms. If you're going to be building a website, register the domain name for your group. And if you have someone that loves to do graphic design or loves to draw, or can do something like that, design a logo. Once you have, those pieces, you'll have, that name recognition, and you'll also have that logo that will be ingrained in people's memories when they're trying to remember, oh, who showed up at the school board meeting? Oh, it was so-and-so, and I remember this logo.
Those are great tips. I will say, because I did have this experience, unfortunately, if you are going to be organizing an event, even if you're having an event at the library, or if you're going to be being interviewed by the newspaper or something like that by the media, make sure you register your domain before you publicly say what the name of your group is. Because I know of a group in my district, and the kind of the horse got out of the stall first. So then another group that was opposing to a lot of the ideas of this group went out immediately and registered those domains. So you just want to make sure that, you do everything, maybe make a list of the different things that you want to do as an organization, and then just tick through the list systematically. So if you're going to spend the time designing a logo. If you're going to create a website, which I think we're going to talk about later. If you have put all this time and effort to coming up with this great name and got all this input from all of your other parents about what the name should be, you don't want to get to the end of the race and find out, oh, you can't use that name. So I would check into the availability of the domain name, and then as soon as possible, make sure you register that name. And the other thing I would say about when you're naming your group, like Minnesota Parent Alliance, everybody knows that's a good thing, and that's a bunch of parents coming together for education. So we typically recommend that the name of your group really be for something. It feels a lot different if the name of the group is a positive feeling thing that people want to get involved versus if it's against. I just feel like psychologically that hits people differently. So if you're for something, automatically, I feel like you're starting off on the right foot. When you're against something, it just can bring out some feelings of negativity right from the get-go. So you have a choice there. So you might as well make the choice that's going to put your group in a better light right as soon as you get out of the gate. So Scarlen, let's talk a little bit about research. So once people want to form a group, they've gone down the path of the nuts and bolts of the name and the website, and they've registered their domain. Maybe they're getting together. They're going to have a rally. They're going to have a parent meeting like Cristine talked about. How do parents find out what's really going on in their districts?
Well, there's so many ways that you can find out what's going on in your school district. One really great way is to, of course, attend your school board meeting. They're not always, fun. They don't always talk about, the funnest things. But that's where you get a lot of information from the way that they're going to use your taxpayer dollars, to, what teachers may be, getting hired, getting let go, to what other initiatives they might be thinking of bringing on. Another really great way, if the information in your school district isn't so public or forthcoming, are filing FOIA requests. That, of course, is called, different things in different states. I know here in Tennessee, we call them open records requests, or they can be public records requests. But these are essentially just, you requesting to have more information about a certain, topic in your school district, conversation, communication between employees within the school district. So it's something that's another really good way to find out who can or what type of information you want to get from your school district. Identify if there are any external actors that are promoting divisive topics in your school. I know that there are a lot of nonprofits that don't always have, the best interests at heart for every student within the public school system. So being able to identify that is a really good thing. And just searching them on your school district's website, it can kind of tell you, who are the nonprofit players or other organization players that are trying to impact or influence your public school system. Find out how your school is teaching hot button topics to students. And a great way to find this information out is from parent tips. Parents will always know what's going on well, maybe not always know what's going on, but those that do have a great relationship with their child, the child brings this information over to their parents, like, hey, mom, today we learned about XYZ. And then mom's like, what? And then they, reach out to PDE, or they reach out to Cristine and say, hey, my student learned about XYZ in this public school with, this, teacher or whatever. That's a really great way to find information to further, research. And also tell parents defending education, let us know. And, we have the time and resources to go and, fully investigate some of these things that you might not have time to investigate. So if you ever see something fishy, let us know and we'll dig in.
Well, thank you, Cristine. We've had the pleasure of working with Will Johnson over the years. He's been on our broadcast many times, and he's an amazing researcher. So in addition to things that maybe are approaches that he's taken, what are some innovative or maybe interesting examples of ways that your organization has gotten information that you were then able to share with the community?
Yeah, well, I'm really happy to talk about this because I do think it's really important as you're setting the tone and the style of engagement that your group and what you value. Think about starting small, because I really think that there's so much value in building trust between parents and teachers. Give them the opportunity first. Just ask them. If there's something you want to know, start there, because I think that we sometimes, as parents who kind of generally hear that there are all of these bigger concerns going on in education, we want to jump to, I want to file an opt-out, I want to file a FOIA, like I want to, just like do that because I'm like pretty sure that's what's going on. And I think that there can be just sort of this like adversarial tone to that initial style of engagement. I think that really trying to encourage the people in your group to invest in conversations and relationships with your kid's teacher, with other district leaders, people that are decision makers in your district, give them the opportunity to be transparent and upfront with you first and answer your questions and have those discussions. And then if you sense that you're dealing with somebody who's not going to be cooperative, you can escalate it. But I want to qualify that I really believe strongly in these parent groups that want to have longevity and want to build constructive relationships, that you are the group that says that they want to start there first, because that's really the goal, is like you want your district to be transparent. You shouldn't have to file FOIA requests to figure out what your kids are learning. So I think just keeping that in mind is really important. And then I really think that as far as finding out more information, there are so many other entities, and there may be some in your state that do great education policy research. So just trying to learn more about what's going on in the K-12 space. I know we have a good partnership with our local state policy think tank, and we speak to people in St. Paul, which is our state capital, of people that do research for our legislators in the capital. And so I think trying to figure out, who are these other really informed players in the K-12 space, and trying to just pick their brain a little bit of what they know. And a lot of times they have the history and the background. I'll speak for myself as a young parent. I wasn't paying attention to what was going on in education a decade ago. So I really find it valuable to find other people who have been in the education space a long time to say, okay, this is like kind of the backstory of what you need to know. This is how we got there. And whether you're talking about funding or curriculum, or other types of issues that your group will be navigating, it's really nice to have those trusted sources that you can go to get a little bit more background.
Great. Now, I know we've talked about kind of a broad view of things, why you would want to form a group, how you're going to form a group, how you're going to get information. These things are all covered in our field guide. Don't feel overwhelmed. Take it step by step. Take what you need, what you don't need, you can leave, but everything's laid out for you. So you can refer to the field guide and it will help jog your memory and remind you of some of the things that we talked about and some things that we're not going to be addressing today, but the field guide goes into in a little bit more depth. But one thing that parents are always asking about and parent groups are always interested in is fundraising. So Scarlen, can you talk a little bit about the need to fundraise, and if so, recommendations for how, as Cristine kind of touched on, your very beginning grassroots parent organization, how do you start on the fundraising trail?
I would say yes, you should definitely consider fundraising unless you want to pay for everything out of pocket, which I just don't think that many parent groups want to do that in the long run. Yes, definitely figure out a way to fundraise. One way that you can do it is consider selling swag, like maybe shirts, stickers, coffee mugs, whatever your community likes and would be likely to buy. Another good way is to say, hey, we are trying to fundraise this amount of funds to research X or file a FOIA, and it's going to cost this amount of money. Then I think that's another really great way that you can not only be transparent about where your funds are going to go, but also tell your group, like, hey, we're getting things done and your money isn't, going to be not well spent. Any additional tips, Cristine?
Yeah, I think running an organization is a lot like running a political campaign in some ways. And so I think that what we tell, people that we help with school board candidates, we'll say, okay, figure out what your campaign budget is. What are you trying to do? Are you trying to send mailers? Are you trying to start a website? Are you trying, what are the things that your group hopes to achieve? And I think it's really helpful for a potential donor to say, okay, this person's trying to raise $4,000 so they can send a postcard to everybody in the district about a certain thing. Or they're going to create a big stack of palm cards for every parent to be able to pass out to friends and people they run into at the grocery store or whatever, that this is the time and date that their parent group meets once a month. Whatever it is, put a price tag on it and then give that to somebody who could be a potential donor to help you so that they have a size and scope idea of like, what kind of money are you trying to raise and what are you going to use it for? I think that one good place to consider finding those people are look at previous school board campaigns where, parent-centered, constituent-centered candidates have run, and there have been people maxing out donations to their campaign. Who are those people that have already invested deeply in somebody who's trying to make a positive change? Approach them and let them know that, your group has more longevity than a candidate's campaign will, and you're the one that's sort of carrying the torch forward. So look for those people in your community that have already made that investment and take them a really specific thing that you're trying to do for your group.
That's a great tip. That's a great place to look. So Scarlen, let me ask you this. Now you've identified your issue. Maybe you've gotten a little bit of funding. What's the best way to inform people in your community about the issues that are going on in your district or the issues that your group is focusing on?
There are many ways that you can spread your message far and wide, and it really just depends on what your community likes best. Some communities really enjoy just creating a one-page fact sheet stating your issue and your action steps on how you're going to navigate that issue. You can have meetings, like Cristine said. You can have monthly meetings, biweekly, whatever your time frame is. But having meetings and inviting speakers to the meetings, and also meet with existing community groups. Maybe there are groups that might not be focusing on the issues that you're specifically focusing on now, but they think alike and they might kind of have the same goal in mind as well. So meet with them, and not only will you have a great relationship with another community group that maybe is already well established, but your numbers are going to grow as well.
Great. Cristine, how does your organization, or what has your organization found to be the most effective way to spread the word about what's going on in your state?
Yeah, I think you're wise to bring up the groups. I do think that working through a network of other like-minded organizations, whether they're faith communities, youth sports associations, political groups, whatever it is, letting them know that you exist and why you exist is really important, so that they can kick those types of things out through their email blast, because it's really, trying to get that communication piece out, and doing it like for free through people that you have relationships with is great. And I think the other thing is, it's really, I think all of us that are sort of, anybody who's listening to this call probably already knows a lot about what's going on in education, or at least more than like the average bear. But I will say that most people just don't have a clue about some of the really significant declines that are happening right in your own backyard. And so I think if you can come up with just some compelling statistics, a little data point, put it in a really simple graph, and it's just a did you know? And so when you talk about achievement and proficiency, it might just be like, here was our score in 2015 and here's our score today. And what do you think? And put it out through social media channels. Get a little graphic that people can grab and post on Nextdoor and Facebook and all these places where parents just kind of, pay attention, and see if you can pique interest that way. Because we've had so many people come to us who were like, I had no idea, like, tell me more, because the postcard that I get from our district is saying like, we're awesome and we're consistently scoring in like, the top 10 in the state. And when you peel back the layers a little bit, you find that that's maybe not accurate. And so if your group can be presenting itself as a source of information, and better information, quality information that people aren't getting, I think that's really helpful, is people will seek you out then as being the expert and telling them something more than maybe what they're hearing from their district's marketing department.
That's perfect. And it actually leads into my next topic, because my next topic is really about the media, interacting with the media, how to go about doing that. And I think, as you just mentioned, Cristine, a big piece of what is going on in K through 12 these days is, unfortunately, kind of a lack of education amongst parents and community members, because everyone's busy, right? And like you said, the newsletter that you're getting from the school is all, sunshine and rainbows. So they're highlighting all of the really positive things. So not all parents and community members are super educated about what the reality. They're not looking at the NAEP scores, for example. Like, they're not super dialed in to everything that's going on in the school. So the media also offers a great opportunity to educate parents and help spread the word about what's really going on in your district. So Scarlen, do you have any tips for parents about how they can get their message out via the media?
Yeah, there are so many ways in this day and age to get your message out. You might have someone in your group, or you yourself love to write op-eds and letters to your local newspaper. And an example of, this one, especially if you don't have a lot of time on your hands, you might have, maybe 20 minutes, maybe 30 minutes. But my school district was going to, they actually did vote on it. They approved it, to bring in school-based therapists that had complete access to children in classrooms. And this was being done over the summer, where parents were not only maybe working, maybe they were on vacation. So there wasn't really, any communication about this. So after I put my 1-year-old twins to bed, I stayed up for maybe 30, 40 minutes. I literally just copied the memorandum of understanding, the words, and copied it over to my Word page, and then added some commentary like, hey, parents, what do you think? I submitted it to my local news publication next morning before the school board meeting. And that actually blew up, and it brought up a lot of parents at the school board saying like, hey, we're not on board with this. It brought other media to let, other parents know what's going on. So something as simple as that can bring a lot of attention to an issue that you're facing within your public school system. Also, setting up accounts with free content platforms like YouTube, social media, for graphics and stuff. Canva, you can have like a free account for that. Develop a social media presence. Again, understand what your demographics are and where they're more likely to view your content. Write press releases. So if you're going to announce yourself after you've registered your domain and everything, you're all good to go and you're comfortable with speaking to the media, maybe set up a press release like, hey, we exist, we're right here, and we're going to be invested in our children's public school education. Identify parents who will do media interviews. So this one's really important because if you're going to go that route, you need to make sure that whoever is going to be speaking on behalf of your group understands the message and can communicate it clearly and will stick to your messaging. Some people may have good intentions, but you might not necessarily want that group member to go rogue. You want them to stick to your message. And also promote yourself anywhere and everywhere with a t-shirt, a pin. Some people do magnets on their cars, but however you want to promote yourself, just promote yourself.
Another thing that I found that has been really helpful for parent groups is also utilizing Substack, because you can't always, if you're starting out, right, you might not always be able to get an interview, be interviewed by the local paper or a local station. So many parents will write up kind of a press release form, but also kind of like a mini article. It can also be like a mini article about something that's going on and put it on Substack, and then you can share that. So that's an easy way to consolidate whatever is going on and have control over how the message is getting out. But you can just share the Substack with people. So it kind of helps get the ball rolling. Cristine, what have you found with your organization works well in terms of media and messaging?
Well, I think it really depends on what type of local legacy media you're working with in your community. We've had mixed engagement with our local media. And I think one thing that's really vexing, at least to me and probably others that care about achievement, is that that's like the topic that none of our media outlets want to cover. And it's the easiest one because it's so clear across so many districts that we're struggling in that area. But our legacy media continually picks up anything that touches on identitarian politics. And so it's really frustrating to try to elevate the issue that you want to talk about and get your media outlets to pick it up. But I was told by somebody, and I think this is a useful phrase, is journalists have to eat anyway, so you might as well be the one feeding them. So if you can come up with, hey, this is a really important issue, journalist, you should pick up on this because people care about this. They want to read about this. Giving your local education reporters ideas of what they can and should be covering sometimes can really help. And then they will look at you as being an expert to say, okay, can you give a quote on that? I would caution anybody who maybe doesn't understand necessarily who they're working with to just ask for questions and comments to be done through writing and keep them really simple and concise, like 1 to 2 sentences, because unfriendly media will often kind of manipulate your quote or paraphrase it or do something to make it less favorable and maybe take it out of context. So try to give them not so much opportunity to do that. Stay very focused, very on message. And I think the same holds true for any sort of public thing that you do. We did a rally maybe like the first year that we got started, and I was a rookie rallier, and in sort of like the idea of free speech and come one, come all, it was like people are making handwritten signs, and it's like a lot of that wasn't on brand with what we were trying to communicate. And so we talked for 20 minutes in a press conference about achievement. And the headline story was, bigoted hate group has this sign that says like no pride in schools. And it's like, we didn't even talk about that. But so really tighten things up. Whenever you're engaging with the media, just be very cautious and very focused and very message disciplined. And to your point, decide who's going to be your spokesperson and make sure that they are communicating the values of your group accurately.
Yeah, those are great tips. I was jotting this down as you were talking, Cristine. I definitely think if you're inexperienced in dealing with the media, keep the saying less is more in your head. So the less you say, because as you mentioned, the longer the interview, the greater the chances of something being pulled out that might not be what you really want to be highlighting. Because once it's out there, or once you've been interviewed by someone, they can make the story about anything that you talked about. So it might not be the issue that you really wanted them to focus on. So try to be really tight and really concise as much as possible.
Always answer the question you wish they would have asked. So,
yes, absolutely.
Like for candidates and for like parent advocates.
So now we know how we're going to get our message out via things like social media and our website. Maybe groups are working on op-eds. Maybe they're working on letters to the editor. They're trying to reach out to their local media. So we've got all of these things kind of happening at the same time. Another really good avenue are in-person events. So Scarlen, what can you tell us about the types of events that parents can organize and how to go about doing that?
Yeah, so events are not only are they fun, but they're also a great way to get your message out and have people that have been maybe working online for a little bit come together and meet each other, meet other like-minded people. Types of events that you want to have, well, maybe you want to have like a back to school bash where you provide school supplies to a certain, school in your neighborhood, or maybe you want to have like a, maybe holiday party or something like that. Maybe you want to have a meet and greet with some local school board candidates that are running, that are particularly favorable towards your issues that you're working on. Those are some really popular events that I've seen that have good attendance within parent groups across the nation. Make sure to publicize your events. So you can publicize them through social media, through your news publications, through word of mouth, through your email list. Encourage all participants to either bring handmade signs that are online with your messaging. You don't want to have some rogue sign that isn't aligned to what your organization is doing. Invite local media. If you have any friendly media in your community, invite them so they can make your message bigger and you can become more known within your community. If you have the funds, hire a professional videographer to film the event or a professional photographer to film the event. And anytime that you do have an event, it takes a lot of time, a lot of effort. So make sure that you get feedback from your participants so you can be bigger and better for the next event that you may have.
Those are great tips. And Cristine, I know your organization does a lot of different types of events. You do rallies, as you just mentioned, you do trainings, movie screenings, things like that. How do you make sure that those events are well publicized and therefore successful?
It's a lot of word of mouth. I mean, I think if you have a really robust parent group, like all parents want to invite, and like you said, they're like, we're social creatures. I think especially moms, it's like, yeah, come to this event and meet some new friends and learn about an issue that maybe didn't know a lot about. So I really don't think there's any magic to it other than just kind of like good old fashioned posting it on your social media and inviting, people on your email list and text messaging people. And I think just if you have a friendly media outlet and they can give you a little bit of a bump in their coverage, I think that's super helpful, but it's not necessary. And I think with all of these things, I personally think that like events sound very intimidating because they are a lot of work and can be. And so don't talk yourself out of, again, starting a parent group or taking a next step because you don't envision for your group to be this big, splashy public exposure thing. It might be, and sometimes the most effective groups are pretty quiet. Like, there's not really anything major happening. We're kind of watchdogging and we're safeguarding our district. We're looking at our school board agenda. We're showing up at meetings. We're having these conversations and building relationships. But there isn't really a need to like call a reporter and like something's on fire. So I think that, again, every district and every community has like their own flavor of what is needed from their parent group. And what is needed in your community might not be the big, public splash. So just know that that doesn't have to look like that for your group.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. I've also noticed, because we work with hundreds of parent organizations across the country, that all the groups kind of have a different flavor. One parent group might be really into doing rallies. And to your point, that might be really effective in their community. But another group might be a little bit more behind the scenes and they might love to write op-eds, or they might love to really lobby and work with their school board members, kind of, outside of the eyes of media and whatnot, and kind of have those more private conversations. So you really do have to kind of adjust depending upon what works best in your area. One question I wanted to ask you, Cristine, is a question that parents ask us all the time is, how do we keep our parent volunteers interested and engaged in our organization? And how do you deal with something like turnover? Because once you've got these amazing parent volunteers, eventually their kids are going to graduate, right? So depending upon what happens, they may stay highly involved with the group, but they may move on to other things. So how do you find and I guess keep engaged volunteers that really are the engine that keep our parent groups moving?
Yeah, well, and it remains to be seen because I think so much of us, we're a young organization, and so are all of these other little parent groups that have cropped up across the country. And certainly turnover is very natural. Like there are different seasons of life for people to get more or less involved and give, the time that they have, the little time, precious little time that parents have. But I think that the main point of, I think, a really robust advocacy group is that it's not just parents who are in a certain season of life and that their kids are in K-12 schools. It's a broader coalition of people. It's taxpayers that really care about how funding is being allocated. It's business community leaders who are looking at the output of our K-12 education system and saying, we need a functional workforce. It's legislators that have, I think a role to play in a lot of what's happening in our, local school districts. So I think trying to diversify the number of people that you're engaging in your group, the grandparents are amazing. And they're some of the strongest advocates and they don't have kids in the public school districts. Sometimes our, most bold speakers are people who feel that they can be emboldened to speak up and speak courageously because they don't have a kid that's in school that they're worried about, retaliation, or it's not a teacher who's in the district that's employed and wants to remain employed. It might be a teacher who was a former teacher. So I think just be creative and thinking about how you can, again, extend the invite to a lot of different people. And I think that kind of helps build a little bit more of a sturdy foundation so that you can adjust and accommodate when there is sort of that natural turnover from parents that need to pull back a little bit.
Yeah, that's a great recommendation. And everybody from different generations too has different opinions and different approaches to doing things. So it's good to learn from each other about what works and what doesn't work and what resonates with different members of your community.
And seek out the young parents that don't have kids in schools yet. Make the case to people who don't even have children yet, but maybe just bought their first home in the district, that this is for them too. I think trying to get those younger or up and coming families is a really big deal.
Yeah, that's great. That's great information. So I know we've thrown a lot at everybody in a short amount of time. So thank you for bearing with us and thank you for hanging in there. We've put all of these tips on our website and we have our resource, which is at defendinged.org/field guide. So you can go there and you can find more detailed information about a lot of the topics that we've covered today. Cristine, let us know, how do parents follow you? How can people follow you?
Yeah, well, it looks like my the Twitter handle is up. If anybody is on X or Twitter, we have our website, minnesotaparents.org. There's a variety of resources there. And I believe our contact information, mine's probably on the website, but it's also info@parents.org. If you want to email us, I respond to all of them, and I'm happy to help anybody in any other state think through what this might look like for them, or even connect them with some of our local district groups that have done a phenomenal job and would be happy to engage in sort of a mentorship conversation to get a new group started.
That's amazing. Thank you so much. And I think, the mantra probably for, I know with PDE and a lot of the other parent groups across the country is that we're all in this together. So thank you so much, everyone, for advocating for your children, for your community children, for your grandchildren. It takes a village. And so we really appreciate everyone's involvement and everyone's dedication. If you need help or advice, please feel free to reach out to us at defendinged.org. And lastly, please share this video with parents, grandparents, concerned citizens who might be interested in working in parent advocacy or learning more about what's going on in their K-12 schools, or even starting up a group. So Cristine and Scarlen, I want to thank you both so much for all the great information that you shared with our parents. See you next time, everyone.
Thanks so much.